Aloha, everybody. And Chris Miller, I do agree with your last thing in the chat of spell check. You know what? When I'm trying to write out Hawaiian words, I can't tell you how many times it like spell check fixes it. And it's like, no, that's not how you spell that. So I agree, Chris Miller. Why does spell check think it knows better than me? All right. Good morning, everybody. I love that we already have a super active chat already. Oh my gosh, Busy Carol, thank you so much for joining us today. I am so happy to see your name pop up. Hopefully, you're not too cold. Y'all, you don't realize that I am actually wearing long pants today because it is actually very blustery here in Honolulu, where it's just like the gusts of wind were like knocking over Cameron's toys, and we are a little chilly. But I shouldn't complain. Oh, snow in Colorado. Whoo! Oh my gosh. So we are very excited today. Today's a little bit different from our normal live streams. We've got our good friend Matt Dahlberg in the house here in Manoa with us. Very excited. We did some recordings with him that I think are super secret, and I probably shouldn't have even said it. And then this workshop as well. And I have a feeling that we're going to get to have some more time with him coming up in the future with just some of the plans that are coming up. But let me see here. Oh, we had some people asking about our Alaska cruise. So we are still currently working on getting that room block. Once we have the room block, we're going to open it up. Everybody who's signed up on our email list, definitely you'll be getting an email from Marion directly.
I do think
when
we
that
have about
room
like
block.
112 on the list so far.
It's actually 140 people on the list so
Ooh.
far. Thank
Okay.
you all for being very interested and excited about cruising with
Now-
being trapped on a boat with us.
And
for
I
7
do want to
days.
say because so for the last 4 cruises they did sell out.
Yes.
Because we can only fit so many people in
The
the
conference
conference
rooms.
rooms, and we only want it to be so big so that we know we can still feel like you're having an intimate experience rather than like, so there is a possibility of selling out again. And we had so many people complain after when it sold out saying, well, you should have told us it was going to sell out, and I didn't put my thing down. And so
we're telling you
we're
now.
telling you now.
As soon as it's announced.
Yes, and we do have some really fun instructors lined up for that as well that we'll announce once we go live with that. But that'll be a lot of fun.
Yes.
But it is looking at like June 2025.
Yeah, it'll be June. Our hope right now is I think we're getting the June 20th sale date. It's between the 20th and the 27th. It's really dependent on those conference rooms. Right now, we're
Yeah.
waiting to hear back from
And
somebody.
we might try to do a special send-off event the night before in
Yes, because
Seattle.
we leave out of Seattle, so we might as well while we're there. Hey, Matt, we might as well while we're there
Do a party.
have a big party to kick off a bunch of us getting on a boat, or excuse me, ship. I always got corrected by our past travel agent where I was like, "It's a boat." She's like, "No, it's a ship." But yes, so many wonderful people in the chat. Aloha, everybody.
And we have been getting emails about our ukulele news roundup.
Yes. So, everybody, we have been getting people submitting to us, which I'm super excited about for our Ukulele News Roundup. We're going to talk about some of those really cool things people are sharing about their clubs and when they meet and things like that. During our February 17th live stream, where that's going to be chord melody, FYI. Now, those of you out there, so please email us. Actually, it's this way. No, this way. gmazel@gmail.com. And we'll share your news. And FYI for today, so for the pop-up workshop, because we put it up at such last-minute notice, we have Matt, the packet itself, there's only one. We don't have a scholar packet, which is fine because this packet includes a really awesome video lesson going through the chord melody of Nobody Knows You When You're Down and Out, which Matt's going to be filming right after this live stream. Craig will edit it, and then we will email you folks when that goes up. But your packet has a link to the page that hosts that video. So if you purchase your packet, you're not only supporting Matt, but you're also going to get an extra video lesson out of it. So we definitely recommend it. You can go to craigandsarah.com/live and pick up your packet today. And even if you're watching the replay, packets are going to be up for forever. So please feel free to do that and help us support our friend Matt Dahlberg, because he's an excellent teacher. You can also learn more about Matt. You can visit his website, mattukulele.com. And he has a very active Patreon page, so you can get to it very easily from his website. Also YouTube, tons of tutorials as well. Matt's been doing this a long time, y'all.
Yeah, let's put Matt on screen for a second.
There's the man, the myth, and the
Matt
legend.
Dahlberg.
Matt Dahlberg.
How's it going?
So Matt, I owe a lot, because when I met Matt at Dusty Strings in Seattle, what year was that? 2011, 12, 10?
10. It was 10.
2010. I was subbing in for, I think Chemo got sick, and I got a call
maybe
asking
it
to
was
sub
11.
in.
It's 10 or 11. Yeah.
And I was having lunch with Matt, and it was exciting because, again, I was kind of new to the whole ukulele movement that was happening, and I was still, living in Eugene, Oregon. And Matt and I got lunch together, and we were talking about all these things that were happening. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going back to a place called Cairns, Australia, for what?" And he's like, "This amazing ukulele festival." I'm like, "Ooh, there's other ukulele festivals." Again, this is really early on, and all my experience for the festival circuit was, Hawaii, and Eugene had a really fun one.
Yeah, which we did the following fall, I think.
But I was so inspired by that. I looked it up, and I got home, and I sent the email, the little submission form. I sent my information and a really corny video that I did with my college band.
Very corny.
And I got a response like a few hours later, and said, "Yeah, if you pay your way to Cairns, we'll take care of the rest and get you set up." I'm like, easy, done.
Yeah.
And it was such a life-changing event for me, and the realization that we could do this for a living and see the world. And so, Gabby, I owe her a lot, but really it was if I didn't meet Matt, because that started my international travel as well. I don't know if I would have pursued the ukulele like I did without that experience. So thank you, Matt.
Well, it goes both ways. So many of those discussions that we had over there were like, "Oh, let's do this. Like let's just go for it." Because at the time it was definitely, there's a lot of waffling of like, what are we gonna do with our lives? And so
because again, this wasn't a normal thing. This wasn't, we had people like, Brittany that were already doing a lot of tours. And even at this point, Ukulele Underground was very underground still in that sense. And it was, there were so many things that we had ideas on, and this was like brand new, so it was really exciting, but super scary.
Yeah. Big time. Yeah, and it's been really fun the last year and a half or so, starting to work more together. It feels very full circle, right?
Yeah.
We kind of did our own things, always had contact and everything, and so now it's almost like we got to find our niches, and now we get to bring them together to make these different things and projects that I'm so excited for.
I feel like, especially as technology evolved, it opened up, again, so many more opportunities. Like, being able to do these live streams are so much fun. We can't always meet people in person, but to be able to still interact with them online and have this real-time exchanges like this is always so much fun.
Yeah. Well, and everything I've done since that call basically has been around the backbone of private lessons that have all been online.
Yeah.
I've had maybe 3 in-person students between that conversation we had and now, and that's just for for situations that are kind of unusual. For the most part, it's like, no, let's do it online, because it doesn't matter where you live in the world. I have students in Australia right now, and it's their Saturday morning on my Friday evening type deal, and so I guess it's their Friday morning on my Thursday evening, but you get the gist.
We know what you mean.
And so it's really surreal and been amazing, and the technology's really kind of caught up to what we've been trying to do with it, which has been really fortunate. So. But my studio does not look like this. I need help.
Oh my gosh, it was actually fun building that wall.
Easier than you think.
Easier
than you think.
Yeah, because behind this is actually just glass. Because this was the sunroom, right? And so we took away all the sunlight. Yep. but that's all right. So it's no longer the sunroom. One thing I wanted to add before we get started, everybody, is FYI. So whenever Craig and I put on these live stream events, there's always a free option. We know that not everybody is in a place where that they can afford to purchase a packet, and that's totally fine. You don't even have to tell us the reason why. Most people do, and it's like, you don't have to tell us. Just write us and say, hey, can I please have a free packet? Yes, you can. And I'll be manning my computer. I'll be sending those off during the event. Also, replay folks, you can also ask for it and request it as well. Any of these free live stream workshops that we put on, you can always ask for a free packet. No questions asked, because we get it. Not everybody's able to do it. So it's not a problem. Just let us know.
Yeah. And again, for those of you who do purchase packets, thank you so much. It does help keep these live streams going and free for everyone as well. So,
we appreciate it. And some things will be shown on screen today. I know that we always try to show as much as we can on screen. But for this one, especially because there's tablature and stuff involved, I do recommend getting the packet, because it's going to be a little harder to read, especially if you're on like a phone. If you're on your big TV sitting on your couch, you'll probably be able to read it just fine. Chris Miller. Chris and Ellen. But yeah, so I just wanted to make sure to throw that in before everything gets officially started. So. Yep.
All right.
We still have 4 minutes. If anybody has any questions, I'm going to be manning the chat.
Matt, tell a joke.
Tell a joke. But so I'll be manning the chat, so definitely ask questions.
We're
and
live, right?
I'll pause. I'll pause whatever's happening and make sure that they get asked. Oh, and we have folks from around the world joining us, from Brazil, from all across the continental U.S. So thank you guys so much. Right now, 92 of you hanging out with us today.
It's the best part about doing this is where it's just like, you're where?
I know.
What time is it?
Yeah. When we have sometimes there's people who join us from Korea, and it's like 4 a.m. their time, and I'm like, "Are you?
Getting an early morning
Did you
coffee.
wake up early, or did you stay up?" Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We had a wonderful workshop.
Yes, with
group
the
from
folks who
Korea.
usually join us from Korea are actually on island. We saw them yesterday
So
in
cool.
person and actually taught a big group lesson. What a fun group of people! Oh my
great.
gosh, I loved them all. I just want to, and I got to hug each and every one of them. Such sweet, sweet ladies.
Yeah, thank you to Calais, who hosted it at his property, and
Yep.
Isaac and Herb. It was a lot of fun.
And where we actually taught where the actual wedding took place, right next to it was so beautiful. I always love going to Calais' house because it always brings back such great memories, right? Because we got married on his property, and it's just like, oh, that's where the actual like ceremony was where we taught, and it was really so nice and nostalgic to get to go and be with such nice people.
All right, Matt, tell a joke.
What do you call?
Chris Miller says that he is watching his big TV. But sorry.
What do you call an ukulele player without a partner?
What?
Homeless. Just putting me on this. Let's teach ukulele. Huh?
Yeah. Yes.
I was just thinking, what good like skateboarder, snowboarder joke could I think of? Right.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, Matt, I'll give you 1 minute and 28 seconds to talk a little bit about our secret project.
Oh my
the
gosh, I'm
secret
so
project.
excited.
Go.
So-
1 minute.
All right, so we teamed up with Calais for this first one, and the whole goal behind it is to be able to bring your favorite ukulele players in and teach their awesome, iconic stuff broken down in a way that makes total sense for wherever you're at on your ukulele journey, really breaking it down to the absolute simplest form and creating the depth of layers, similar to how I would in a private lesson. So often I get people sign up for lessons and they say, I want to do this crazy, awesome song. It's like, all right, here's how we're going to break it down so that you can learn the skills and develop what you need to be able to do that thing. So we got to do that with Calais and with his song Feel the Beat, which is just, if you haven't heard it, it's such a cool song.
It's a great song.
And so we broke it down. It was funny because we were like, okay, I wonder how long this first part's going to take to film. And every video went way over in the time because we're just talking and it's not even random stuff. It's all the things that, like I wanted to learn when I was learning this stuff. It's all the questions that I hear my private students ask me every time I'm in a lesson. And so I'm thrilled for this. And the combination of, working with Calais, who's just the best for this stuff. Calais is so awesome. And then obviously Craig and Sarah with everything they provide with the infrastructure and So it was so cool to just kind of show up after these many hours of Zoom calls with Galay to work out what we're going to be doing and just sit down and do it. I didn't have to worry about anything. They kept pointing to the right camera for me to look at. I'm used to only looking at one camera.
Yeah.
There's a bunny on top of it. It's a good indicator. I don't look at this one. I look at
That's
that
right.
one.
Look at the bunny.
But really excited about that. And I'm doing a festival in the UK in July.
Yay!
And so fingers crossed you'll know a lot more before then.
Yeah, we're hoping to have
that.
at least part 1 of the whole series done by then.
I'm so excited that you get to go to the UK. Hopefully, we'll get to be there. Hopefully,
We're
2020.
looking at next year.
Hopefully,
maybe.
2025.
Yeah.
I hope. We were hoping to get there this year, but I don't think it's going to happen this year. But have a wonderful time. Ukulele Festival of Great Britain has a very special place in my heart.
We're so excited. Bringing Christy and Jack.
Oh my
and
gosh.
So it's going to be a family thing.
They're going to have a
and
great time.
So many people are out there too for it. There's so many incredible artists. So it should be a lot of fun. I'm very excited.
Sweet. Well, I think the countdown is down, and if you want to
cool.
officially start, you certainly can, and I'll have Craig mute my mic so that when I set it down, it's not ka-thunk while you're teaching.
It's okay. Anyone that watches my videos will be used to the random audio problem. Cool. I just got new strings on the ukulele yesterday, so I apologize in advance for any tuning that takes place. But I'm so excited about this because we're going to be working on a really cool song. If you've heard Eric Clapton's acoustic live album, it's such a good album. You've heard this song before. It's a pretty old song. It was written in the 1920s, so it's public domain. So yay, no licensing needed or anything. And so Craig and I were talking about doing a workshop, and he expressed, interest in some good technique, especially that right hand type of technique. And so we're going to be really focusing on learning a technique that I like to call the muted swing strum, and we're going to be using it with this song. So if you look at this tab and it looks intimidating, and you're like, oh, I don't play tab, there's a lot here for you that doesn't even involve the tab, which is kind of great. And so the chord progression here, it's pretty old-timey sounding in a really fun way. I'm just going to play the chords, and I'm going to play the chords with the muted swing strum technique, just so that you can see and hear what this should sound like. And then we'll kind of dive in to talk about these chords and the technique and have a good time with it. But it should sound something like this. That's just the chords. It's not even like a chord melody, but it's so lyrical with how just the chords are played. There's so much movement to them, so it's really satisfying because even if you're just strumming them, it sounds full enough to be its own thing. If you want to sing the song or play the song, you obviously can do that along with it. But let's go ahead and take a look at just the first 4 bars here when we're playing this, so that we can get comfortable with these chords and moving through them. And so you'll see that the chords are listed here above the melody notes. Now the tab that's listed below right here, for now, we don't even have to worry about this. All this stuff here, don't even worry about it yet. It's not important at this time. We're just paying attention to what's listed above with those chords. And so what we're going to look at is the top graph that teaches us what voicings we're going to be using for these. So the first chord's an F chord, and F chord's super simple. We're just gonna put our 2nd fret here on the G string with our middle finger, and our 1st fret here on the E string with our index finger. If you're playing high G, because you're team high G like I am, you can just take that middle finger off and play it open the whole time. You can do less and create a better sound. But if you're low G, I recommend against this in this particular place, but more on that later. So first chord's an F chord. Now we're gonna do this for 2 beats. So for now, we can just kind of strum through with our thumb, 1, 2, no problem. The next chord we're going to play is an A7. Just take that index finger and pop it up to the 1st fret of the C string and remove the middle finger. Strum that one for 2 times. Nice and straightforward. Then we're going to play a D7. Now this is a bar chord. If you haven't played bar chords before, I'll give you a couple tricks with it, but you're going to take that index finger and you're going to bar it all the way across the entire fret here. Now, when I say the fret, it's kind of funny because we think of the space between the frets, as the space, but really everything's about this wire right here. Now we can't push on the wire, that doesn't work, but we want to hug it, meaning you don't want to be right in the middle here. You actually want to get right up next to that fret wire and kind of hug it to make sure you get a good tone. If you come over, that's going to create a muted sound, so we don't want that, but getting closer to the fret wire really helps. And there's two ways you can do this D7. One is you can just take this middle finger, place it here on the 3rd fret of the A string, again, getting right up next to that fret wire. Squeeze down a little bit, and also, as Craig says, pull back. It's not just the squeezing here with the thumb, it's also pulling back as you do this and creating a balance between those two to create that sound. You'll notice I could actually just pull back and create that sound. That's not right either, though. You don't want to just pull back, just like you don't want to just squeeze. Now, the other way you can play this chord is if it's tricky, you can take this middle finger and you can stack it across the index finger and then use your ring finger. If you're brand new at bar chords, this can be a great way to get a little extra oomph. I recommend this one, though. And we're gonna do that for 4 beats here. So we're gonna just do 1, 2, 3, 4. Super straightforward, right? Now, we're going to continue on. We're going to learn these first 4 bars before we start talking about the swing strum and the muted swing strum and all the cool meat and potatoes of this workshop. But I wanted to show some movement with this. So if you look at G minor on the tab, you'll actually see it's not your normal G minor chord. It's up higher on the fretboard. And the reason for this is it is going to give you access to this melody note. You can see that this 5 on the A string is going to be played. Again, I told you not to worry about the tab in case you were worrying about it. That's why we're looking at it. But this G minor chord is a lot like an E minor chord just moved up. So if you know how to play an E minor, it's that, and then you just slide it up to 7, 6, and 5. If you don't know what I said there, that's totally fine. Just take your ring finger, place it on the 7th fret of the C string. Take your middle finger, place it on the 6th fret of the E string, and finally your index finger here on the 5th fret of the A string. Really important with this is to make sure that you get a nice arch with each of these fingers. You're not getting too relaxed. That's where people get buzzing, is when the fingers are touching the strings, so make sure you're nice and concise with them. It's a little bit of finger yoga, right? It's like downward dog, but for the fingers. So it does take a little bit of practice sometimes. But what's nice about this is we can create movement, because we play this one for 2, and then we go to a D7 the way that we just did it. And what's cool about that is it creates that movement downward. And then we're going to go to G minor 7, kind of a spicy jazz chord. I couldn't teach a workshop with Sarah and not have a minor 7 chord in there, right? I think that's illegal in this state. And so what we're looking at with that G minor 7 is, well, it's kind of like a B flat chord, which some people probably just clicked off the video because I said that, because B flat's that first hurdle. But what's cool about it is it's a good way to train up your B flat. Take that index finger, bar it across the 1st fret on the E and the A strings, hugging right up next to that fret wire. And then take this middle finger and place it on the 2nd fret of the C string. And what you're working on is that arch that I just talked about with those fingers. This middle finger needs to be arched over, while this index finger needs to be flatter and straighter. And so that combination is difficult. Normally for a B flat, we put on one more finger. Now we're gonna make it easy on ourselves. Play it with that open G. It's a wonderful sounding chord, G minor 7, one of my favorites on the ukulele. And so those are the first 4 chords of the song. And if I just use my thumb and strum through them, it sounds something like this. Pretty straightforward, pretty cool, right? So what we want to do is we want to start talking about how we're going to play these chords before we work on the next one. So 4-bar phrase is a lot to work on already. And so this song is not played normally. What I mean by that is if you said, hey Matt, strum the song, and I went like this. See, it sounds awkward, doesn't it, right? And the reason for that is, well, it ain't nothing if it ain't got that swing, something like that. Something like that, Duke Ellington, I don't know. We need to swing it. Now, most people can just swing. They just feel it and they do it. And the swing sounds like this if I do that just F chord. So go ahead and try doing it with me. Now I said most people can do it. So if you are one of the people that can't just do it, know that I am also one of the people that could not just do it. Swing did not make sense to me. I was always out of time. And so what I needed to do was break it down to its core level. And even if you just can feel it, understanding this can help give you a little bit more nuance to your swing technique. And so I'm going to scroll all the way down here to this incredibly intimidating looking thing. So let me explain. I promise it'll make sense. What we're looking at is the tab here in these notes for a moment. Look at this right over here, right? Do you see how this is a quarter note and this is an eighth note? I know I'm losing people. Bear with me. I promise this will make sense. And then there's a little 3 above it. Well, all this stuff is trying to say that we are, instead of doing just a binary even relationship of down and up as equal things, the down strum is actually going to be worth double what the up strum is in terms of time and duration. You can even see this at the very beginning of the song, the rhythm marker here. You probably have seen this in tabs before. You might not know what it means. This means a swing feel. And what it means is that your first strum, this is our down strum, and your up strum are worth the same. But in this case, your down strum is worth a quarter, your up strum is worth an eighth, and that's just very simply your down strum is worth twice what your up strum is worth. So going back now to what that looks like with the strum pattern stuff, so try to zoom out. This looks something like this when you write it out as a sort of strum pattern. Now, the arrows can be a little bit intimidating, but take them very literally. Our down arrow is going to be a down strum. Up arrow is an up strum. You see the dotted box in between? What is that? Well, that's space. And this is what creates a swing feel. If you do a normal strum, you can just count to 2. You can go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. We usually count it with eighth notes, so like 1 and. So if I do 4 of these, it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But now with the swing feel, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to have nothing between the 1 and the and. I'm going to stall the hand. So it actually goes 1 and. That's kind of weird. If I play that with more of them, it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now I'm kind of off with this rhythm because it's so hard still to this day for me to feel it when I just say these 2 terms. So what I find so important is when you realize that this can be counted, this space right here. And so what I like to think of is, instead of just thinking of it as 1 and, think of it as 1, 2, and 3. Think of that as a 3 for just a moment and count these 3s and try playing that. And so what you can end up having is just taking your basic down and up being 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You don't need to do it this fast. You don't need to think about this, but just know this is what's happening, because this can help break down a lot of different things, especially this more advanced concept that we're going to be talking about. If this is already a lot for you, just swing strum the rest of this workshop. Everything we're talking about works with this swing strum, and the more comfortable you get with it, the easier it'll be to incorporate this next thing that we're going to be mentioning. But that's a swing feel broken down for those that might struggle with the swing feel, which was absolutely me when I was learning this stuff. So now what we want to do is we want to take the swing strum to a whole new level. Now this looks so intimidating, but this is my single favorite like jazz swing technique, because it is 1 beat long and you can use it for a whole song and it never gets boring, which sounds, fake, but it really just sounds that good. Now it is a little bit like doing this, right? Now, how many of you struggle doing this? I know this seems random, but I promise there's a reason for this. I couldn't do this for the longest time. So when I was teaching, I'd be like, oh, it's like patting your head and rubbing your tummy. I always felt funny because it's like, well, why can't I say that if I don't know how to do it? And what I realized was when I pat my head and rub my tummy, if I am at the moment I pat my head where my hand goes up to the top of my chest, it's actually really easy to do, because now I'm making a relationship between the 2 hands and acquiring the skill based on an understanding of what's actually going on. We're going to take that same type of mentality here. We're going to do it slow and figure out how things fit together. And then from there, you can speed it up till eventually you can just do it and make it look like you never did it slow. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do our same down strum just on that F chord. And we're going to do just like that. No problem, right? Then we're going to mute the strings. Now, this is a big concept. For now, the simplest way to do this is to take this ring finger here and this pinky finger here and set them on the strings very lightly. Now, bonus points if you can actually release the pressure with the index and middle finger at this time too, so that they're all at this sort of equilibrium where you get this sound. It's a muted sound. Now, this is not easy to do. If at first all that you're doing is setting these 2 on and maintaining the pressure here, that is okay. Eventually, though, you do want all these fingers to be at that same equilibrium, so to speak. And so let's just try playing like a down and then a mute. and a mute. I'm just using my thumb on a downstroke right now, just to kind of get comfortable with that technique. So as you get comfortable there, what you're going to do is you're going to do your normal downstrum. And then when you look at this here, you'll see that there is a line written through this box. This line is telling you to mute the strings. That line symbolizes, hey, fretting hand, get off. We want to just touch the strings. So on 1, I strum through. On the invisible 2, right, in that invisible second motion, I'm going to take my fingers and mute the strings. And then what I'm going to do right after that is I'm actually going to bring that up to, oops, I won't do it that way. Let's just redraw that. I'm going to then bring an up strum. And when I do that up strum, you see it still has that line through it, right? That line is telling you that it's still muted. We can call this a scratch, which is a term I just started using 2 days ago, thanks to Craig and Sarah. I would always just call these mutes with everything, but I like the mindset of the mute is the fretting hand, and then the scratch is the right hand, the strumming hand, making a strum motion. So this seems very simple and basic, and it truthfully, it is to just do these 3 motions, but we want to practice getting them really consistent. And so this is what it looks like. So let's go ahead and try this together with this chord. We're going to play our F, and that's our 1. And then we're going to be counting to 3 here. So on the 2, mute. And then on the 3, come back up with your index finger as a normal everyday strum. And if you strum with your thumb or with a pick, that's fine. It doesn't matter what finger you're using right now. This is all about that fretting hand, just making sure that we're doing a down and up strum with our playing hand. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Notice the 3 to the 1, same interval of distance, and this is what creates the swing, right? So we can't have any delay there. We can't go 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That doesn't work. It's 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Go ahead and try playing it with me. And I'm going to start speeding up, and when I go faster than you're comfortable with, that's totally fine. Hear that 3. Might be going too fast to count it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That's a little bit of a mouthful. But you can hear that sound. It's that kind of classic archtop guitar jazz type of vibe, right? It's really nice. Now, if you do it wrong, it sounds like this. And that's what I used to do for a long time, and that's why I didn't like jazz and swing music, because I was like, this sounds awful. Why would anyone do that? What am I doing wrong with that? Well, what I'm doing wrong there is I'm not muting on that invisible 2. I'm going down, 1, 2, and then on the 3, I'm putting the fingers on to mute and coming up at the same time. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That doesn't sound good. Well, I guess that's subjective. I don't think it. I think it sounds like me in like the year 2008, and so I don't think it sounds good. It's just forced, right? But you add that mute on 2. Oh, it's such a cool sound. And just using this technique, you could play through the whole song doing this, and it sounds wonderful. You can play any chord progression using this. Really, the song we're working on today, it's just an example. If you play the blues, oh man. It's just this sweet sound. It just works. And you can play the whole thing just with this technique, and it sounds good, which is what makes it so magical. Now, when we're looking at this song, we just did it for the F chord to start, right? And with the F chord, it was pretty straightforward. We just took those 2 fingers and we threw them over there, right? Well, what about the next chord? The next chord's the A7. Well, that index finger comes over here, and hey, this is actually easier because now these 3 fingers can all come over. It's not about just using these 2 fingers. In fact, sometimes you'll even hear this called a pinky mute, which I hate that word because it implies that just the pinky should be doing it. And while the pinky can be doing it, it's not saying the pinky's wrong, it's just so much harder. I like to call it the whatever finger is free mute, which doesn't roll off the tongue quite as well. Now, when you're playing these different chords, it's really important to keep in mind that different chords will feel differently, but if you can create a consistent feel amongst all of them, you're going to have more consistency with whatever you play. And this really comes into play here with this next chord. When we go to this D7, we're barring now across the 2nd fret, right? Well, what fingers need to come over to mute? Well, technically speaking, if you release the pressure on these 2 fingers, you're fine. That's all you need to do, right? So that's the most efficient method, right? Well, in like a, in a vacuum, yeah. But we're not playing in a vacuum, right? This is not a Dyson commercial. So what we need to make sure is that we take these other fingers and we bring them over. Not because they're needed, but because it creates consistency of feel. If I can do it with this chord, and I do it with the F chord that way, I do it with the A7 chord this way, then no matter what chord I play, I'm going to be comfortable bringing my fingers to that sort of equilibrium, making this technique much, much more comfortable for everyday play, because you don't have to worry about, oh, have I done this chord before? No, you do it the same way each time. And so what that looks like with these 3 chords is something like this. See, I'm still bringing those fingers over as I go, right? Now from here, what we're going to take a look at is the G minor chord as I tune my ukulele. Thanks to the guys at Kanalea for putting on a new set of strings yesterday. Woe to me for not trying to stretch them more between then and the live stream. But what we look at now is this higher G minor chord. And one of the reasons I picked this was for the movement that I mentioned a moment ago. But another big reason I picked this is actually to show some of the muting. So these fingers are going to play, and then to mute, they're going to come off the strings, right? And when they come off the strings to create that muted sound, the pinky is going to just kind of kick over. Well, it's kind of hard for the pinky to kick all the way over to the G string. And it needs to, because that's the only string that's not covered, right? These 3 fingers got these 3 strings covered. So the pinky doesn't really have to be very part of these 3, but that G, it really does, right? Well, here's what's cool about this. If you don't mute the G string, if your pinky just kind of comes on and it doesn't touch the G, is it a big deal? And you tell me. Here it is with my pinky coming all the way across. Sounds like this. That's my big palm of basketball hand pinky coming over, right? So let's say you have a more normal human being size hand, and that's really hard. Well, how does it sound like this? That G is ringing, and it doesn't matter, right? It still sounds good. In fact, I actually prefer the sound more with the G because it's different. It creates depth. Depth is created by variation, right? If you do the same thing the same way every single time, it has no depth to it. We want to see different things and hear different things. So by doing the technique lazier, you sometimes make it sound better, which is kind of cool. This doesn't always work, right? I'm not telling you to always be as lazy as you can be with playing, but a lot of the times it's totally fine to just let that G ring out. In this case, it works really well.
I do have to mention though that it does sound much different on a low G.
Big time.
Yeah. So
when you do the low G, you're going to have a booming bass note, right? And what you'll notice is that a lot of these chords with the G, high G players will play it very differently because of that. And so if you are playing low G, I think it is much more important to try to get that pinky up, or you can even take the thumb and wrap it around. A lot of people say that's wrong all the time, and why do they get to say that?
It's not too late to switch.
Yeah.
It's never too late.
Yeah, or just switch to high G and don't join our team.
Have one of each.
We have cookies, so.
Yes.
And so if I'm playing on a low G, oftentimes with that, I will be using like the thumb to come up, which is a lot, but the pinky there too. Or just pick a different voicing of the chord, one that closes the string.
Or strum just the 3.
Or strum just the 3. Exactly. Yeah, just angle and directionalize the strum so that it's not hitting that G as much. Is that a word? It is. It is today.
It is today.
I love it.
So is it? I don't know.
Oh, it probably is.
Yeah.
But that's just,
I make up words all the time, and then I'm really relieved when they end up being real. Like audialize. That's a real word. Like visualize. You audialize when you try to hear a song. Anyways, so that G minor chord, is going to be different with the high G versus low G. It still works on both. You just might notice on a high G, you like it sounding more with that open G ringing. And with a low G, you might want to try to mute it more or just attack the string in a little bit different of a way. And so then when we go from that G minor to the D7, what's happening there is we're going back to that bar, and you see that I'm still using those fingers to kind of come off and on as I'm doing it, right? And that's the big deal with this, is I'm trying to get comfortable with this chord and all the chords looking as much alike and the same as you can. We look at that last chord we learned in the first 4 bars, and then we're going to move on here in just a moment. it's the same deal. Now I'm using these two fingers and these are coming up. Now, how many of the strings need to be covered with this? If I'm releasing the pressure here, what strings need to be muted? Just the G, right? And I'm just kind of kicking these fingers over. And hey, you know, if I leave that G open a little bit, that's okay. But you'll notice I never will play it like this. And the reason is I want to create that consistency of those fingers being able to just come over so every chord starts to feel exactly the same. Because the more similar it all is, the easier it is to be able to use this in a lot of different ways. And so let's go ahead and hear those first 4 chords. My tuner's buzzing a little bit. Should sound something like this. Pretty cool. Sounds great. Let's go ahead and move on. Let's learn these other chords, these other really cool chords. So this next chord is called a B flat 6. Now, this is a great little high G versus low G thing. So if you're playing high G, all that you have to do here is play 0, and then take your index finger barred across the 5th fret of the C, E, and A. So you have that 5 on the C string. The middle finger here goes to the 6th fret of the E string to get that B flat note. And then the index finger is covering there on the bar for the 5 on the A string. This is a B flat 6. What makes it a B flat 6 is the same thing that would make it a G minor 7 in terms of the notes used, because they are actually the same exact chord. So if this is tricky for you, it's fine to play the first G minor 7 chord that we have on there. That's what's neat about it. The G minor 7 and B flat 6 are the same notes that are being played. They're not the same chord, but they're the same notes that are being used. What ends up deciding which chord it is the bass player, which is non-existent right now as we're playing. So you can really use either of them. Now, if you're playing a low G, this sounds kind of cruddy. I don't like this chord at all on the low G. So if you're playing a low G, what you want to play is this 3, 5, 3, 5. And this is a little bit more of a stack on it. Index finger on the 3rd fret of the G, ring finger to the 5th fret of the C, middle finger on the 3rd fret of the E, pinky on the 5th fret of the A. Now here's what's crazy. Sarah's got a low G there, it looks like. So go, yeah, hear it with that open G, doesn't sound very good, right? And then play it with the...
Oh, here, let me do this. Okay, ready?
Sorry, we're improvising. And now play it with the 3, 5, 3, 5. See how much nicer that is? And that is actually a B flat 6 when you play it on the low G ukulele. Because,
Actually, we'll have you do it.
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
No, not at all.
There's a hook. There's a hook.
Oh, you see, they have all these things set up, and it's just lovely. All right, if I play this, it's not a bad sound. It's a terrible sound. No, I'm kidding. It doesn't work great here, but this sounds great. We got the B flat and the bass now. This is actually a B flat 6 chord on the ukulele because it's got the B flat and the bass.
And for those of you who do have, are working on releasing the tension, hold that for me real quick, 3, 5, 3, 5. For those of you who are working on trying to release the tension, practice with this chord. You have 4 fingers on each string. So once you strum and you release that pressure to work on, again, releasing all of that tension to get that mute.
And what's cool about it is you're still taking whatever fingers are free and muting with them.
Yeah.
There's just no fingers that are free. So the mindset doesn't change when you're doing like a 4-finger chord like this, because you're still going to be pulsing and releasing, and you're still going to be thinking to take whatever fingers are free and add them on there. There just happens to not be any, right? But what's funny about this is when I play that shape on the high G ukulele, it sounds like this. And when I play the shape I just showed you on the high G ukulele, it sounds like this. They're exactly the same. There's no difference at all. It's just strings are flipping. Listen to me arpeggiate them low to high. Okay, now listen to this. It's exactly the same. It's kind of funny because that's like on high G, why would you ever play this one over this one? And there are reasons, but I certainly play this one a lot more just because it sounds so cool with that. So kind of an interesting thing, but I'm gonna play this chord to start this. I'm gonna do the same mute technique that we worked on before. And then I'm gonna play this G13. Now you could just play a G7. If you're overwhelmed by all these crazy jazz chords, just play a G7, it's totally fine. But a G13 is going to add an E note. So the way that we play this is coming from that B flat 6. We're going to keep that bar across on the 5th fret. We're gonna take the middle finger off, and then we're gonna take our ring finger and add it here on the 7th fret as a partial bar on the E and the A strings. Make sure you get right up next to those fret wire. This is a good sound. This sounds good on the low G too, because you get that low G. Now, when I'm muting this one, this is kind of an interesting one because it's whatever fingers are free. To this point, we haven't had a middle finger free. I'm still just going to be kind of putting them on there as I go through. And that makes it easier for getting comfortable muting the G string because the middle finger naturally kind of falls across. Look at my pinky. It's so pathetic. It's just like kind of a string and a half there. It's just getting comfortable getting on. Is the pinky actually doing that much work? No, it's just consistency of feel. The more you can do it similarly, the easier it is to do it diversely. So I'm just going to do that for the 2 beats now. All right. So we've got a B flat 6, G13, then we go to an F, and this F chord, we're right here, and you can just play your normal F chord if you'd like. You'll actually, we'll come back to this as kind of a second repeat, and I'll show you another way to play that. We just play our F, and then we go to our D7, same thing we've been doing, and then we play this cool G7 sus2 chord. Now, G7 sus2 is a lazier G7. That's all it is. Because you play your G7, 0, 2, 1, 2, middle finger on the 2nd fret of the C string, index on the 1st fret of the E string, ring finger on the 2nd fret of the A string, and then you pop that finger off. You just do the open A string, and that's it. 0, 2, 1, 0. Now, what's interesting about this is just a mindset. If you were playing this as its own chord, you might be playing it more like this, right? You might be having your fingers more straight up and down. But I like to think of it as the G7 extension, even though I'm taking away from the G7, just because I might want to add that finger back on. And if my fingers are straight up and down, it's kind of hard to do that. So kind of have the fingers tilted a little bit to create that sort of feel and vibe. You're gonna do that for 4 beats, and same deal with the fingers. And then we're gonna play a C7 chord, one of the easiest chords on the ukulele, index finger here, on the 1st fret of the A string. And that's the entire first 8 bars now. So we kind of doubled up on what we started on here. And what's cool is you really get a feel for the song. In fact, the form of this song, it kind of repeats the same 8-bar phrase twice with just a little bit of variations, and we're going to talk through those. But you can really get a good idea of what this is going to sound like by just playing these first 8 bars. And so what that will sound like just strumming through should be something like this, going through measure 1 through 8. Pretty cool, right? Now, that was the 1 beat pattern used for 8 total bars. And I mentioned you could play it the whole song, but you don't have to. If you want, you can just go back to the muted strum, or excuse me, just the normal swing strum. And it sounds great. So what if I, just for fun, I alternate? Like I go 1 bar muted swing and then the next bar just swing. That might sound like this. And what if I do it mid-bar? It just works, and you can start to get the feel, and then you can just kind of start muting where you want, doing some cool up strums and things. When we do our little chord melody version of this, for those of you that get the packet, you'll see examples of that being used, of a little bit more diversity in the rhythm. Makes it super fun. But let's go and look at the next 8 bars, which if you learn these first 8 bars are pretty straightforward and easy actually, because it's exactly the same stuff with just a little bit of change. Starts off with the same F chord, same A7 chord, same D7 chord. Now, if you're playing the melody of this song and you're trying to position the chords around the melody, you might want to play this G minor chord differently. You can play it like a normal G minor. And that's just because it's going to give you that melody note, the 1 on the A. You don't have to though, you can go up to the 5. Totally works and sounds fine. You go to the D7 chord. Well, if you want that melody note, maybe you'll play like a 2-0-2-0, oftentimes called the Hawaiian D7. I think it's just called that because it's taught in schools, right? As the D7. So I think it's as simple as that. So you can play that. There's no D note in it, which is why we call it the Hawaiian D7 instead of just D7, because it's missing a note, but it sounds good. And then from there, we're going to go to our G minor 7 again, that same one that we just played. As we go on from here, we're going to go to measure 13. We play that B flat 6 chord. And then we're going to play that G13. Love both of these with the muted swing strum. And this is a little different. I love this part. And then we're going to play an F add 9. Now, I already showed you an F add 9, especially for high G players, like this earlier in the lesson. But the way we're going to play it now is moving up the fretboard. Now, quick note. This is up the fretboard. And it's so confusing. I get it, because gravity exists, right? You know, it's like this. But let me rationalize it for you real quick. It is down in direction, but it is up in both number and pitch. 2 is more than 1, so it gets the name up because of those two things. But we're going to move up the fretboard so that we can go back down the fretboard. So if we play an F add 9 instead, like this, we're going to play 0 on the G, 5 on the C with the middle finger, 5 on the E with the ring finger, and 3 on the A with the index. Now what you'll notice with this is these 3 fingers are all kind of tilted towards my right shoulder, the fingernails. That's because I'm a right-handed player. If you're a left-hand player, I'll tilt towards your left shoulder. But you'll notice that this tilt, you can't play this chord straight up and down. It doesn't work. And you want to make sure you're getting right up next to those fret wires. If you're playing it like this and you're getting a buzz and you're like, why is it buzzing? Just try to get right up next to that fret wire and I think you'll notice it'll go right away. Love this chord on a high G. This chord on a high G sounds great because it's so open. But on a low G, it's a little bit dicey, right? And yeah, I'll show them. If you don't mind tuning this too while I show them. So if I play this on a low G, that's a little bit tougher of a sell, right? And so when I'm playing this, what can I do differently? Well, one thing you can do is just not play the G string. So you can like take your thumb and you can go over there and play the same stuff. There's other things that you can do too. You can pick different ways of playing the chord. You can also embrace the madness of that sound. It's kind of up to you. The simplest recommendation is not so simple at all because it involves basically playing an E chord, which I wouldn't wish on my worst of enemies. No, you should embrace it. It's good to do. They keep telling me. And so that's another way to do it. If I were playing on a low G, I just kind of mute that string or not strike it with this particular thing. Or just, maybe you like that sound. Maybe it works for you there. And so from here, what we're going to look at is moving downward toward the D7. So the D7 is played like this. And all that you have to do is play this for 2 beats and then play this for 2 beats. And you can hear that downward movement, right? Because you're going down the fretboard. But if you really want to spice it up, what you can actually do is you can take this and move it down a fret and move it down a fret and move it down a fret. And what you've done now is you've went from this F to an E to an E flat to a D. And if I just play these 3 strings, the C, E, and A strings, it's a D chord. It's not a D7, but sometimes it sounds better to do less. Sometimes the situation sounds better than the numbers, if that makes sense. If we think about this being just these 3 notes, it doesn't, like, why would I play a D instead of a D7? D7's so much richer. Well, that's richer than a D7, I think, right? And so these are the things to think about when playing. And in this particular case, what we can do is just strum these down. And what you want to play it, what you can do, is you can end up just doing a down and then up and then a down and then an up. And when you come to that last up on the D, you can kick that index finger over to the 2nd fret of the G string to make a complete D chord if you want. You can also do other things. It's this tuner. It's the tuner. Yeah, it's the buzz-free tuner. And so that creates this cool sound to create that really nice feel. And we talk more about that when we do the chord melody version. It's kind of a feature of it, but just something to try. And you can't really do it wrong as long as you're within the right beats and it sounds good to you. A quick secret of music: if it sounds good to you, you're doing it right for you. Now, does that mean it's right for if you're playing it with someone else? No, because they might not like how you're doing it. But that doesn't matter when you're playing by yourself. If you like a sound of something, embrace it. It's your journey. So, but after we've done that D7 now, we then go back to our G7 sus2. And then we go to our C7 for just two beats, before going to the F to finish it. And that's the biggest change with this whole thing, is that the very last bar has 2 on C7 and then 2 on the F to create the end. And so previously it was just 4 on the C7. So just that little change with the F add 9 and with this, but you can really see how it's the same form, just with a very small variation. So now with this in mind, I'm gonna go ahead and play through this form. I'm gonna play through it all the way, I think twice. And the goal here is, if you're at home with your ukulele, try to play along. And when I say that, I mean just do what you can. And if you mess up, don't get frustrated. Just try to follow and jump back in where you can, if you can. If you are just trying to play this chords with simple down strums, that's great. If you're just working on swinging, just mute the strings and just get the rhythm with me, right? It doesn't matter what you're doing. Just try to do something with it, because it'll make it easier. I'll give a little story about when I was learning jazz in college about that and struggling. But let's go and hear what this sounds like. Should be something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. On to measure 9. Again. I'll just do straight swing strumming, excuse me. Back to the muted. A mixture. Pretty cool, right? And you can see I did some weird stuff there. I would even like strum a chord and then just let it ring. As long as you keep that hand moving in the swing pattern, it doesn't matter what you do. You can create all sorts of different sounds, which again, the other thing that we'll be working on with the packet will go more into depth with that, but you don't need that to be able to start doing this. It's just a matter of trying to start getting that feel. When you have that sense of 3 under the hand, it works great. A lot of times people ask, when I'm counting this, it's like, are you always thinking of that count? It's like, no, but that count made me relate to it. That's what created the feel for me. And so it might help you on your journey with this, but find what works, get that sound, and kind of go through it. I mentioned before that there's a little story I want to tell, and especially when you're just playing along with me, if you were really struggling with keeping up with anything, know that that's totally normal. When I started studying jazz in college, I brought my ukulele to a jazz class thing, and it was really funny because I knew a couple advanced instrumental solo stuff at that point in time. So I was like, oh, I'm definitely good enough for this class, right? It said intermediate skill level needed. I'm like, I'm better than intermediate. This will be no problem. I went to the first day of the class, and there were a lot of different people in it, a lot of retired folks too, studying music, and there are these 2 guitarists who are a bit older, retired, and they had their guitars out, and they're just playing super simply. It wasn't anything that fancy in terms of technique. And I pull out my uke and start warming up. I'm going, whatever thing. And they're like, oh my God, you're so good. And I had all this, early 20s confidence where it was like, yeah, this is going to be great. And then the teacher handed out charts. And it was autumn leaves, the most basic of basic things, right? Puts it in front of me, is like, all right, we'll just warm up with something simple. 2, 3, 4. I'm like, C minor 7. And I look over, and those 2 guitarists are just doing everything. And I'm like writing on the page, C minor 7. Okay, that's C, E flat, G, B flat. Okay, C, E flat, B. And I'm trying to figure it out. And by the end of the song, I was like, okay, C minor 7. And then the song was over. I was like, oh, there's a lot more chords than that. And it was such a humbling moment for me because it was so different than what I'm comfortable with. And even though I had some experience playing the ukulele, I didn't have experience like that. And your experience doesn't transcend. You need to have more experiences to have them. And so when I started to learn how to solo, I'd ask the teacher, what do I need to do? And with that same Autumn Leaves, he'd be like, oh, try your C Dorian scale or whatever. And I'd be like, great. So I go home and I start playing my C Dorian scale over and over. And then I'd put on the recording to play with. And within 45 seconds, I was like, this is awful. I'm doing something wrong. So I go back the next day to the class, like, that didn't work. What can I do? He's like, oh, play the thirds and the sevenths of the chord. So I'd go home and be like, okay, the third, and then the seven, and then the third, and then the seven. Okay. And then I put on the recording and started jamming with it. And 30 seconds later, I was like, this is garbage. I don't know the right thing. And this process repeated for like a full week until that Friday, the teacher was just like, dude, you just got to go suck for a while. And it was like, what? He's like, just play. Like, play until it sounds less bad. Don't worry about sounding good right away. Worry about sounding less bad as you do it. And that was such a mindset shift because I wanted everything to be the right way, right? We're so scared to learn things the right way the first time. And there is places for that, and there's no question, but sometimes you just gotta kind of suck, and that's okay. So when you're playing along with me, if you're like, oh, I'm hitting all the wrong chords, doing all the right things, don't focus on that. Focus on when you did hit the right chords. Like, oh, I hit that F chord at the end. I hit that C7 in between.
Well, I mean,
So
you know, Uncle Brian Tolentino, I mean, he is always saying, you know, fail.
Yeah.
He's like, I failed more times than you tried.
Yes.
Like, and that's the biggest difference. That's the only way to grow.
Exactly. That's what success is a mountain of failures. And anybody who's successful at anything can tell you that, right? And so don't be afraid to suck with this. It's okay. My favorite analogy is like learning to ride a bike, right? If you try to learn how to ride a bike, you can't preordain everything before you jump on the bike. You got to get on and start pedaling, and you got to do it fast enough to be able to balance, which means you're going to fall. There's just no way about it. The only difference between somebody who can ride a bike and somebody who doesn't ride a bike is not whether or not they fell, because they all fell. It's whether they got back on the bike enough times to not fall. And that's the same with this stuff. So when you're playing with it, if you make a mistake, don't pause the video and try to fix it every time. Let it play through and see if you can start to hear what that is going to be and make those adjustments. Now, I'm not telling you never pause videos. I'm a firm believer of watch something, pause, work on it. I just mean don't be afraid to play the wrong note and then work into the next one to be correct. It's such an important thing, especially with jazz, because you play a note wrong once, it's a mistake, but you play it wrong twice and it's jazz. So that's how it goes?
Play it with
like
authority.
Yeah, there we go.
Play it 8 more times.
8 more times.
Yes. Yeah.
And so now, with this, it's a really fun thing to take this concept and apply it to anything that you're playing. Super fun technique. I use it all the time playing blues, anything jazzy. You'll see me use this technique, and it's almost comical if you watch a video of me comping. Comping just means playing along. It's a jazz term for being a strummer, basically, or picker, but it's playing the background. And so what you're going to do now is watch other ukulele players, and you'll see this, and it's like, oh, that's what created that sound. That's not. They're using it a lot. It's because it creates this amazing sound. Sarah's raising her hand because she likes this technique. Oh, because she has a question.
There's a question. So one person asked, so after the muting, Matt is doing a scratch up strum immediately.
Yeah, it's with those 3 motions, right? So the first motion is going to be your down strum. I'm just going to keep it all open for a moment, right? I'm going to play down, and then I'm going to mute, and then I'm going to scratch with the up. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And this is a great way to practice it. One other little note here is when you look at my strumming hand, you can see it starts making a little bit of a circular motion. I usually don't bring this up at first because I used to in lessons, and then they come back the next week and they'd be like a train engine going around. It's very subtle, but the circular motion can help divide the 3, where you kind of have that first one, and then you're kind of moving down a little bit on the 2 and then coming up. It's a very small circle. You can even use your sound hole as kind of a point of reference. You can kind of do the strum around the sound hole. You'll notice most players will do that same tightness of the motion, but moved up a little bit. They tend to strum a little bit more over the fretboard.
Well, again, it ties into tapping your head and making the circle.
Exactly.
You could say we went full circle with it.
That's exactly what I meant. No question.
She says thank you. She got it.
Absolutely, yeah. And this technique takes time. This is one that really rewards just a lot of failing and trying, and break it down really slow. I've taught this technique to a lot of people over the last decade plus. I've been teaching this technique, and I would say about half of them get it like I do. And what I mean by that is that they're going to be methodically going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, and be able to do that kind of at any speed, up to the speed that they do it at. And then the other half of the people use it at that slow speed to a certain point, and then they kind of get it, and then their fingers just work. If you ask them to play it slow and count it, they wouldn't be able to because they're not thinking about it anymore, and there's nothing wrong with that. They have it in there. So like if you asked me to teach English, it'd be really difficult because it'd be like, well, you just say it. Like, what do you mean? How do you? And it's just because it's an innate skill now at this point. But if I were to learn another language and try to teach it,
can you do a quick pop progression with that technique?
A quick what?
Pop progression.
Yeah. So if we're doing like if we're doing with the same mute, yeah. If I play like I'll do as simple as it comes. I'm gonna play a 1, 6, 4, 5. Yeah. So what that is C major, A minor, F, and G7. And what I'll do real quick is I'll play it with like your standard down, down, up as normal, and then I'll jazz it up by just changing with the rhythm. So if I'm just going, I'll swing it.
How to try a blues progression.
Sometimes I just ride mute.
What about something like the was it the 5'2" chord progression? What about a jazz standard progression?
I know that song.
Just talking about it. So. Or we can do something a little bit more cool.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Those are two obscure jazz hits that no one really knows. But it's a really cool technique to add a lot of texture. And you notice I did it predominantly, but I very rarely used it completely exclusively, right? I throw in a little muted, a little normal swing strum in there within the mutes, just to create these different vibes and sounds. And that's what these are. These are like language tools. These are vocabulary words for you to then take and say what you want to say with them, right? So there's no real wrong way to use these as long as you're within the right time frames and strumming. It's not illegal to do a muted swing and then the rest swing. You can do whatever you want.
And just a reminder, just like poetry, if you share the same poem with a bunch of people in the room, everyone's going to say it differently. Same thing here. You have the same chords, but to approach it and to perform it and play it differently, it's going to be completely different.
Yeah.
Or it can be completely different.
Well, and I love the poetry analogy too, because if you're reading a poem, especially if it's longer, what's the pacing of it?
Yeah.
You have a sense, but like if you read the poem in one environment and then you went to another and somebody said, "Hey, read that poem again," exactly the same way, the performing artist is gonna be like, "Oh my God, what do I do? Like, what did I say? What did I do?" It's the same with this. I'm still playing, nobody knows you when you're down and out with the swing technique, but I'm not going to use the same swings in every single way. Sometimes I'll use a little bit more muting, a little bit less, depending on how I feel in that moment. That's frustrating for a learner to hear because you haven't developed that vocabulary yet. And that's why it's really important to use things like these lessons that say, do it this way. Not because we're telling you this is the only way to do it, but because that's the vocabulary for you to then expand upon. And that's what makes it so much fun, is when people get to that point and then break away from that point and do their own thing and make it their own.
Yep. So, am I muted, Craig? So the only thing I wanted to add to that is something that we say frequently, which is never be married to how you learned the chords originally, because you should be able to play them a multitude of ways, and those ways will come the more you play, and the more chord transitions, et cetera, that you play is going to change how you do something.
Yeah, the more diverse you approach it, and it's actually, you know, even with when we're talking about how people learn when they're so afraid to do it the wrong way, there's kind of no wrong way. There's just less effective ways.
Yes.
And some of them are so ineffective that we call them wrong. But the skill that you built to develop that incorrect thing was still a learning process and a skill building exercise. And for you to undo that skill and rewire a new skill, you will be better at that new skill than someone who only learned it the right way the first time. It might take you longer, and that's where the efficiency comes in, and people talk about, I want to learn it the right way first so I don't form bad habits. Well, bad habits are still habits, and the more habits you can create and be able to switch between, the better you are as a player. I still remember I got to meet Jake at a show in Seattle like in 2009. So this is about the same time when Craig and I started talking, and when it was like a lot of realizations were coming of what I want to do with this. And Jake asked me to play a song for him that I was writing. And so I played it for him. It has this like big stretch in it and things. And he's watching it. And then right after I'm done playing, he's like, oh, I love that. I especially love this part. And he plays that really difficult part. He watched me do it and just does it. And I was like, but then he didn't just play it. Then he started playing variations on it. Ones that I'd never thought of. It's like, Jake, I just spent like 4 months working on that stretch. You did it in half a second. And then you showed me 6 other ways to do it. And that was the realization of it's not just the one way, it's the multitude of ways. And so to talk what you're talking about with chords, if you get stuck in one way of playing a chord, you're limiting yourself and your potential to be able to play with more. And it's like vocabulary. If you only say that sucks and you don't have another word for sucks, it's going to be really rough when you want to be able to articulate something in a different way. Right? So
Oh my gosh,
windy
the wind.
here.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys might hear that actually because of the microphone.
That is cool.
Yeah, I think it's like potentially 50-mile-an-hour gusts. It's intense
and
outside.
I'm supposed to fly home tomorrow, so I hope my
Hopefully the winds will be
speaks
done by then.
We're gonna get there like 4 hours early,
Yeah, right.
or take an extra 6 hours. We'll see.
Yeah, getting the jet
Nice.
stream. But yeah, don't be afraid to make mistakes is a big thing with this. And you know, do something wrong. It's okay as long as you fix it, right? I mean, if you keep doing it wrong, then yes, it's a problem. But just like when I was soloing in the jazz class, like I had to do it wrong to do it right. I was so scared of being incorrect that I never
Now,
progressed.
would you mind actually playing a bit of the chord melody, so that people can know what to expect for those who purchase
Absolutely.
packets?
Yeah, so what's cool about this chord melody thing is it's not following the melody super articulately. It's supposed to be stylized, and that's what's cool with this. Is just as we talked about, kind of making it your own. This is me making it my own and kind of showing you every single thing I'm doing to make it my own, so that you can take those tools and make it your own too. But it looks something like this. It's the same form, same 16-bar phrase we just worked on, and it sounds something like. Tune, but I think it's better. I think the song wants a little out of tune instrument.
Push it down and out.
Exactly.
Who can afford new strings? Down and out.
And so, were there any questions in the chat or anything?
You know what? The only one that was in there was the one that I asked you. Well,
Well-
there were a couple, but I was able to answer them really quickly.
Cool.
But yeah.
I always get
everybody
nervous
got
with
late.
that because it's either I explain things so well or they're so lost they don't even know where to begin.
You know what? There weren't as many people chatting in the chat because you knew everyone had their instruments in their hands.
That's
And
what
they
we
were
like to
actually
hear.
playing, which was really nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun song. It's new to me too. I just actually played on the Ukulele Site podcast 2 nights ago which will be up soon if you're fans of that, and play this with Corey and Calais, which made me feel woefully inadequate, and I was jacked on it. Like, it's just so much fun to watch them absolutely shred. They're so good.
100% agree with you on that. I bet they sounded amazing. I can't wait to watch that episode because those two guys, and this is such a great, so this is such a fun song for soloing, no matter what level you're at, because there's enough chordal movement happening that like you could totally play whatever and henpeck around on your fretboard and something's going to sound cool. It's just that kind of a song.
Yeah, play the chords and then just pick out the notes.
Yeah.
And there, boom, solo.
It's a really, really fun one. So, well, go ahead and put in last minute questions if you have them. But I just want to say a huge, huge mahalo. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining us today. It's always awesome getting to have you pop over here, though we do miss the family. Hopefully next time they can come and maybe we can do another beach day because that was a blast.
It's so much fun.
And again, we'll keep you guys updated about the Secret Project. Lots of info coming out.
It's so cool.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
It's so great.
I love it. The Secret, Not So Secret Project.
Yeah, we've been talking about this project for a while now. This isn't some brand new like, oh, we had this idea, let's try it. No, this has been working behind the scenes for a while to get it right. And,
we had one person ask a quick question, which is, does Matt do in-person workshops and festivals?
Yes, I do. So I don't do many festivals. I don't travel a whole lot. I just like being home too much.
Well, you got a family. I get it.
But I will be doing a festival at the Ukulele Festival of Great Britain in July, which I know is a little ways away if you live on the mainland. There are no other festivals I currently have scheduled. I was supposed to play at the Brown County Ukulele Festival, and my flight was canceled because of all the MAX 9 stuff. And then I was unable to find another flight, and I missed it. So that was a big bummer. But I talked to Mike, who runs it, and I think we're going to try to do it again next year. I still feel bad about that, but it was kind of out of my hands.
Well, that was totally out of your hands. You had no control over that.
That same morning, I managed to hit my fence with my car in a black ice incident too. So it was a great day.
Oh my gosh. Oy.
But thank you again to all of you who joined us live. I hope you guys are enjoying also if you're watching the replay. Don't forget to learn all about Matt at mattukulele.com.
Yes, and David Bailey, your question of do you recommend other lessons and techniques? Check out Matt's website because he actually does have a lot more with this as well as other things. So
I've got some courses for sale on my website, and then all of the stuff that's on my website is also on my Patreon page under the membership with it. And so I've got some lower tiers. I've got kind of a middle tier that's has coursework, and so I have a whole strumming course. In fact, these graphics that you saw on the screen for the strum patterns were from that. I did a basic, not so basic jazz and swing strumming and a ghost note strumming course that are all there. It's many videos, tons of hours of content.
Definitely go check it out. Wonderful teacher, wonderful guy. Just it's been a blast. We'll have more info for you soon. Some new sticker news as well.
Yes.
It's so cool. It's the coolest sticker that's ever existed.
And Carol, thank you again for helping out so much in the chat.
Yes, thank you, Carol.
Again, send us your ukulele news for the roundup coming up in a few weeks. And again, thank you all so very, very much for your support. Thank you for supporting these live streams and letting us feature our amazing friends. And from all of us, aloha from Hawaii. Thank you so much.
Yes, aloha.
Thank you so much.